Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipster Podcast. This is your host, Jamil Hassan, the Crypto Hipster, where I interview founders, entrepreneurs, executives, thought leaders, amazing people all around the world of crypto and blockchain. And today I have an amazing guest. I'm looking forward to this interview. This man is the head of ventures and investments at the Hashgraph Association. His name is Andrew Forson. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jamil. It's a pleasure to be here, and what an introduction.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. I've interviewed a number of people from Hashgraph over the past few years, so this is going to be great. So I look forward to it. And let me ask you the first question. What is your background, and is it a logical background for what you're doing now?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. My background is actually in financial risk management and engineering. All of my education has been in business and mainly finance and quantitative finance. But for many years, and pretty much the bulk of my career, I've been in the IT space. I've been running companies. I actually started my career with Deloitte Consulting. I ran my own fintech. At the time, it was just a financial engineering company. And everything I've been doing has been in the software space, but with a financial focus. And in around 2017, 2018, I started getting interested in, it wasn't really called Web3 then, it was basically blockchain. But I was getting interested in the distributed ledger technologies and the potential implications it could have in the world of finance. And the rest is history.
Very cool. So you joined the Hashgraph Association. When and what has been your primary focus?
Yep. I formally joined the Hashgraph Association actually about exactly 1 year ago, September 1st, 2023. So I'm noticing my 1 year anniversary is coming up. And I was recruited in the role of head of growth at that time, which was designed to basically attract enterprises, SMEs to Hedera. Now, I had been working in the Hedera ecosystem, building some applications on Hedera for several years prior to. So I was actually quite familiar with Hedera. I was not as familiar with THA, but I certainly had some awareness of the Hedera ecosystem, which includes, of course, Hedera, the HBAR Foundation, Swirlds Labs, and other entities. And I was particularly intrigued by the Hashgraph Association because they had a mandate of enablement, but they also have sister entities like the Hashgraph Group, which focuses on corporate enablement and corporate and enterprise integration. So for me, that was particularly interesting because all of a sudden you had a Web3 distributed ledger technology company where the focus was on actually solving real enterprise business problems and not on rather ephemeral or unfixed, unmeasurable implementations. So prior to my time here with THA, most of the projects that I'd be involved with had to do with building foundational tooling within the Web3 space. And now the role is focusing on building tooling or getting tooling to solve business problems, or focusing on investing in enterprises that use Web3 to solve business or individual problems. So it's really cool. It shows the growth of Web3 from an R&D project to something that is practical and increasingly making people's lives better and making the ability to do things in the world easier.
Very cool. I want to talk about that, making the world better. Um, so one of the areas that you do is ESG, right?
Yes.
So how can we best leverage blockchain to create ESG impact initiatives that foster sustainability?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. And first off, for your audience, sometimes you'll hear people say blockchain, and I will refer more frequently to DLT or distributed ledger technology. And it's just because blockchains are a type of distributed ledger technology, and Hedera is a hash graph, which has a different type of consensus algorithm, but it's also a distributed ledger technology. So Hedera is a distributed ledger technology. Blockchain is a different type of distributed ledger technology, but we're all effectively in the same space, and they all generally tend to solve the same type of problems by allowing data to reside in a decentralized space. And that's a great way to segue to an answer about your question when it comes to ESG. And ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. And let's take an example from the environmental space. Oftentimes, you may have heard about carbon emissions or carbon emissions traceability and tracking. Now, this is a very powerful industry space because there's an actual secondary market and value for carbon emissions that have been either reduced or created that can be tracked. And this is a wonderful opportunity for DLT technologies because the DLT being a public, in our case, it's a permissioned network, but being a public network that enables you to add information but doesn't allow somebody to easily delete information, it means that you can actually rely on the data that is put in there because there's also a cost associated with that data, and there are processes to assure that the data that is being lodged to the ledger is provided in a transparent way that other people can audit. So that's a lot of quasi-technical mumbo jumbo, but ultimately what we're looking at is we finally have a system that enables the public to see the processes used for capturing or tracking and tracing carbon emissions, for instance. And what is also interesting is now that those processes can be lodged to chain, those actual records for those assets can also be captured on chain in the form of a token or a certificate, which might be represented by an NFT. Because it exists on the chain in that way, it can be transferred and it can also be traced. So this is creating a situation where if you have an enterprise that is in the Netherlands and they go through a bona fide process to be able to validate carbon that has been sequestered from the environment or emissions that have been reduced, if they're able to quantify that, there's no reason why another entity far away in North America or Asia can't look at the mechanism that they used and say, yes, I'm willing to have that token which represents that carbon that has been sequestered or emission that has been reduced and transfer it, and I'm willing to pay a price for that. But if you take it one step further, Jamil, think about what would happen if you are actually creating these credits and tokenizing them in a far off country like the Congo or someplace in Africa or a lesser developed country. All of a sudden, something that used to be incredibly costly to validate for geographic reasons or travel reasons can basically leverage distributed ledger technology and the same processes that you would use in Canada or a developed nation to create these credits. And these credits will have the same value as credits that are available on international markets because they're readily transferable with a really low fee, right? You don't have to use a regional exchange. You should be able to capture the credits because these credits represent a global interest, and you should be able to transfer them anywhere that they have value. So between having that public auditability because it's being made available on chain and having that ability to easily transfer, track, trace, and record pretty much anywhere. We're finding that that particular industry space is growing a great deal. And it's not only in the space of something like emissions tracking, it's also in the space of impact. Uh, there are many ways of being able to measure something and having the methodology appear on chain and the underlying asset or result of what you're measuring also be lodged to the chain. And so long as people can see it transparently and then transfer the value associated with that, you've effectively created a new economy. And that economy is global. It's pretty much anywhere you have access to the internet and can download a wallet.
So impact and ESG. I want to see how did you guys help allow for a successful the mangrove reforestation project?
Yeah, actually, this is a really cool project. And this was done in partnership with Deloitte and Touche out of the Netherlands. And they basically used Hedera technology and a platform called the Guardian, which is a digital measurement, recording, and verification tool. So it's sort of like, well, this is a simplification. Our brilliant engineer, Manuel, would probably really be disappointed in my description, but it's sort of like an automated audit system that you code the policy for the creation of carbon credits. And you can actually add the parameters in a coded way. But once it's coded and it's issued to a smart contract on chain, those processes are available for everybody to see, but they can't be changed. And the fact that it can't be unilaterally changed makes it particularly reliable. So Deloitte out of the Netherlands worked with a Caribbean nation to measure the mangroves, which are plants that grow at the threshold of the beach and land, and see how much carbon these mangroves are able to sequester from the environment. And that product can then be tokenized. And once it's tokenized, that capacity can actually be traded or exchanged in other markets for economic value. So you can think if you're a small island nation, you have perhaps limited geography, this is your way of perhaps contributing to the battle against climate change, but also receiving an economic benefit for maintaining the population of mangroves on your coastlines.
I like it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, actually. And we have to give a lot of credit to obviously the engineers at THA, but most definitely the Deloitte consulting offices out of Amsterdam and the Netherlands.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So you're therefore manifesting healthy biodiversity systems.
Yes.
And you have another project that you did that too as well. It was a honeybee traceability project that I would like to learn more about. How did that work?
Yeah, I actually I can even be quite generic with that. So obviously bees are an integral part of the fauna of the earth. The way they manage pollen, their populations are quite critical to, I think, almost all life forms. But it's really, really important that you're able to track and trace where either the bees are going so you can better protect the populations. Or if you're a honey producer, you want to be able to perhaps track and trace where your honey is being produced from. This is not an uncommon request. Many industries, for instance, the chocolate industry, they rely on the cocoa plant and they would like to make sure that the farms on which the cocoa are planted are adopting healthy business practices for the employees, the farmers alike. And one of the ways of doing that is by letting the consumer know that if you scan a QR code on your bar of chocolate, you can actually see the entire journey of the ingredients from the farm to your bar of chocolate on chain. And this has other implications. So just like the honeybee project, the implications here is you not only get to see where your produce is coming from, but perhaps you might be interested in knowing Were the farmers that were employed in the production of your produce paid a fair wage, right? So all of this serves to bring transparency to something as simple as food, but it also lets you know more about the conditions in which your food was created. There are wine traceability projects where you also get to understand the vintage of the wine, the season that the wine was produced in, where it was produced. You can add so much more information to a QR code that retrieves the data on chain. And as an end user consumer, you have confidence that since the data is coming from on chain, it can't be tampered with, right? Because that's one of the beautiful things about blockchain or DLT technologies. Once the data is submitted to it, it becomes the single source of truth for that data. You can't really change it.
So I don't know if I'd be interested in learning about the wages and the food that I ate, but I
Yeah.
definitely I think I'd definitely be interested in know if they use Roundup.
Well, actually, that is a great example. If somebody is putting an organic sticker on the food, or they're claiming this food has not been produced with pesticides, how do you really know, right? With this system, if you're able to see where the food is produced, you can see geographically where it came from, the dates and times. If you wanted to, you could audit right back to the farm to know, well, is it true? Does this farm consume this sort of product? This is the sort of thing that the traceability systems are being used for, particularly in agriculture and the food services space. But those same systems are also used to track and trace things like pharmaceuticals or surgical parts or machine parts for complex systems like jet airlines, the military, what have you. So you don't have to only think of the technology as having applicability in one industry. It can be applied to many industries for great benefit. That's the power of Web3.
So far, so good. Sounds good to me. Um, I want to I want to switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
Impact to finance because finance was your initial background. Recently, the Hashgraph Association launched the first Valor
Yeah.
Hedera ETP at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange a couple months ago. How did that process go? What was the result? What was the benefit?
Yeah. This was a project that was near and dear to my heart. Um, so the Hashgraph Association sponsored and worked with Valor. Valor is a financial services firm that specializes in making exchange traded funds, exchange traded products. And very much like the spot Bitcoin ETFs that they have in the US, or the more recently regulated spot Ethereum Ether ETFs, we created a spot Hedera HBAR ETP. So it is a 100% one-to-one backed regulated financial product that trades on regulated exchanges. This instrument is slowly being rolled out around the world. I think on the 18th of June was the launch on the Frankfurt Exchange. Then we had a launch a few weeks later on the Northern Growth Market out of Sweden, and there are other markets that it will be deployed on. Why is this interesting? Well, for you and I that are very accustomed to Web3 and crypto and blockchain, we have wallets. We know where to go to onboard into this world, how to buy the tokens, and then you keep those tokens in a crypto wallet. The problem is, for compliance purposes, most companies, institutions, do not even permit the utilization or the holding of crypto. They view it as something that is quite risky. And then, in terms of the regular retail market, most individuals, the average person, does not necessarily have a crypto account. Even though in our world that's a very common thing, there's a lot of people, particularly if you're in a certain generation um, who have access to a lot of wealth, they may not be used to or may not be confident in how they can go and enter the space and buy these instruments. What we did was create a structured product, and this was actually done by Velour and sponsored by THA. But we worked with Velour to create a structured product that wraps the H bar in an regulated exchange traded instrument that lists on stock exchanges. So it means you can go to your standard broker, give the ISIN number or the name of the instrument, and buy it with regular money, but have the exact same exposure to the HBAR token as you would if you were to buy the native token in the DLT space. But why is that important? Well, it's important because all of a sudden it means corporations can hold the HBAR token in their treasuries because this is a regulated instrument, just like any other stock that you can buy at a regulated exchange. It's also important because individuals are able to buy the HBAR token, but through the Valor Hedera HBAR ETP, they're able to purchase it into their retirement accounts. And it's just like you're purchasing Apple stock, Microsoft stock. Now you can gain access to this particular token. So it's regulated. It's trades on regular exchanges. It's easy to get. It's easy to buy. It's easy to sell, and it's very secure.
I'm wondering what the possibility of it that happening in Hedera HBAR ETP being an ETF happening in the US.
I think that's actually something that is quite possible. The regulatory framework, obviously, with the SEC is different, but I do know that Velour is a global company, and they're very skilled and have an interest in uh, getting these instruments listed on many markets throughout the world. But it's a work in progress. They just started in June, so we'll be hearing more in the coming months, I'm sure.
I'm interested to see what the updates are going to be. It should be good.
For sure.
Awesome. So I want to go back to how to leveraging DLT for the common good, right? And you
Yeah.
are checking off the tick boxes when it comes to United Nations goals, right?
Yeah.
What other ways can we leverage DLTs for common good, and what other things we have look forward to from your organization?
Yeah, I think from the perspective of our organization, we're we're very good at supporting entities that do big things. And one of the biggest things is the transfer of value. You should think of things like stable coins. You should think of payment systems. So the ability to seamlessly move money from perhaps mobile money in one country in one currency that has the security of DLT, leveraging Hedera to get that money to another country with minimal fees, but doing it very, very fast. In almost all instances, faster than a wire transfer, right? And then the other thing is you should also think we're lucky. Right now, I'm in Switzerland. You're in the U.S. The U.S. probably has the world's reserve currency. So every other currency almost measures itself in relation to the U.S. currency. But imagine you're living in a country where the currency has a very low value, it's very volatile, it depreciates 10, 20, 25% a quarter, right? You may want to be able to save. But if you save your money in your home currency, you're basically letting it get destroyed because of that devaluation. So this is where something like a stable coin is a very interesting proposition because even though you might be in a country that doesn't have the best communications, the best banking system, if you're able to access the DLT space, you will be able to access perhaps stable coins and save your money in US currency using the Hedera USDC coin. And I think one of the areas where we've been particularly strong is we have something called the Stablecoin Studio. And what it does is it helps large enterprises more rapidly adopt the technology needed to deploy a stablecoin while leveraging Hedera. And by large enterprise, I'm talking about banks, financial institutions, and otherwise, right? So that is one big example of something that we're doing. Another big example of what we're doing is in the education space. We have a project right now taking place in Africa across 5 countries, 5 different markets, where our push is to support the education and training of 3,000 Web3 Hedera certified engineers, right? So the idea here is to support the ground up development of Web3 application development on Hedera by ensuring that university graduates and eligible high school students who have engineering skills are able to become certified so that they in turn can build out applications to help their own economies. So that is another example of something big that is happening. Other significant projects that we've been working with, significant construction materials provider here in Europe, has been able to leverage Hedera and the Guardian through our technology to actually embed the emissions reduction or the carbon sequestration process in the manufacturing of their housing materials. And what is interesting here is, as I was mentioning before, many Fortune 500 global firms, they don't like to hold crypto because it's considered a high risk asset. So in this particular instance, we leverage something we refer to as a transaction gateway, which enables payment in fiat, so payment in regular US dollars, and then it converts that to the H bar, which is needed to validate transactions on Hedera, right? So these are different examples of how we're taking practical steps to make it easy for Web3 to be used in real solutions to solve real problems.
Sounds good to me. I just so when I think of payments, I've always had this like you mentioned this stable coin. I think of Tether, right?
Yeah.
I don't think of other things. I mean, a Tether and then USDC and then the different dollar state. I don't think of Hedera being a stable coin. Is that have you found that to be a thing where people don't consider you to be a stable coin?
Yeah, actually, that's the beauty of what we do. You can think of us as sort of like a dial tone network. So USDC actually has an implementation that runs on Hedera. So Hedera itself, the HBAR token, is not a stable coin, but our network is one of the fastest networks for the transfer of tokens. And it's very, very interesting for stablecoin issuers to use Hedera because our transaction fees are actually fixed to the US dollar and they're very low. So a transaction on the Hedera token service, for instance, will cost 0.00001 US dollars. So that means you can run many, many transactions, have them go incredibly fast because we have a threshold estimated to be about 10,000 transactions per second. Like that's a lot of transactions. So an entity like USDC would actually be running their stablecoin on Hedera. And then for you, the end user, it's transparent. You're thinking, oh, you're using USDC like anybody else. But the reality is, on many of these transactions, it's actually Hedera that is the underpinning network that is facilitating those transfers. And that's the implementation of Hedera on USDC on Hedera.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
Very interesting. Very cool.
yeah.
Awesome. So I want to thank you very. I enjoyed talking to you today. This is great. Lots of things to look forward to, and you guys to some really great things. So I love it. I do have one last question for you.
Shoot, let's go.
All right, it's easy. How can people find out more information about you, about the Hashgraph Association, about what you do? Can they follow what projects your guys are doing? How can they do any of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So about me, I'm on LinkedIn, Andrew Forson, Forson, and click connect, and will gladly accept. And when it comes to the Hashgraph Association, we have a few domains. We have our new website up at hashgraph.swiss. So that's HASHGRAPH.Swiss. And our old website name, which should redirect to the new one, is hashgraph-association.com. So you're free to also reach me via email, andrew.forson at hashgraph-association.com. But I think the best thing is probably LinkedIn and hashgraph.swiss. We also have a great LinkedIn page, and you can just look up the Hashgraph Association on LinkedIn, and there are lots of updates on our projects there.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
Jamil, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Hope to do it again.